Welcome to Uncaged. Today we're speaking with Chitra Madhwacharyula. She is an expert on customer success centers and customer success and how companies, enterprises can think about expanding those activities and managing them more efficiently and effectively. And in fact, actually, she's an author of a relatively new book called Scaling Customer Success: Building the Customer Success Center of Excellence. Congratulations, Chitra. But before, we want to go through the book, and I certainly want to talk about some of the learnings that are there for folks. And I think the customer success space is incredibly important. But perhaps as we start the conversation, maybe if you can just kind of spell out what you see as a customer success center of excellence.
Absolutely. So before we even get there, let me talk about, what I mean when I say customer success or partner success. Really, what we are talking about is once the customers or partners come in and they sign a contract with the company, so they sign on to build a working relationship with the company. From that point, usually those relationships are handed off to a post-sales team, and that's where customers are involved. Customer success comes into the picture, and where partners are involved. In many cases, partner success teams come into the picture. They handle activities like customer or partner onboarding, day-to-day management of customers and partners. They keep track of what the success factors are to make these relationships successful. They make sure that these partners and customers are enabled properly, and both those entities and the company that they're working with, all of them are equally successful. So to provide clarity, to identify the right kind of metrics, and then track to them and make sure that everybody's aligned towards the common goals. So
when a company gets going, and really of any size, there's kind of really two big factors. One is certainly growth, how many new customers you're signing up and the interest that you're signing them up with, and all of the metrics around that, but also retention of relationships and growth of those relationships. And really, I feel like we're talking about the second bucket here, and how we build that. And it's so absolutely critical. And in fact, actually, it's been an area that so many companies get wrong because they focus so much on the first part of it, and then they forget the second part of it. And so when you do it correctly, it's very, very powerful. So tell me a little bit about Scaling Customer Success, the book, and some of the magic that we might find and some of the learnings that we might see in there.
Absolutely. So this book basically came about from my personal experience. So I have been a professional for 23 years now. 17 of those years have been in customer-facing roles, in professional services, in customer and partner success, and also in consulting. And I have been an individual contributor. I have grown these practices, managed these practices. And during the course of doing that, what I have discovered, and my co-author also had a similar experience, what we've discovered is that a lot of companies, a lot of leaders are really good at launching these practices and getting them to a certain stage. So they typically start with focusing on the highest value customers in terms of the revenue that they bring in, and sometimes the growth potential. And then they focus on these customers, and they have a pretty good handle of how to work with these customers. And then what, right? So the question comes up, like, how do we expand this model to all the customers in a company? And usually, that takes some investment. You might not follow the same business and engagement models with all your customers. That would require some scaling capabilities. And really what this book talks about is that how do you set a foundation for scaling your customer success practice from the very beginning. And once you set that foundation, how do you build upon it? So you obviously start with a certain subset of customers. That's the most common model. But then how do you expand that model to all the rest of your customers without a major reorg or without really overhauling your current practice, which is what would happen if you haven't planned for scale from day one. This book is a practical handbook. The way we look at this book and the way we have written this book is that any customer success leader or manager can pick it up and read through it and directly implement some of these workflows and practices and that we have identified in the book into their own customer success functions and practices.
It sounds really helpful. I mean, tell me a little bit about the companies. I mean, I know you've worked at very scaled businesses like Hewlett Packard and others. And I'm just curious, do you find now that people are embracing this idea of creating a customer success center of excellence? Is this a trend that we're seeing across the industry?
Definitely, as operational efficiencies become more and more important, a lot of companies are looking at how to solve this problem one way or the other, whether they are building formal CS centers of excellences or not. Because, in today, especially.
I mean, in some ways, like you could build almost like a blueprint in a way, and then it's just trying to figure out how you get it across the operation, right?
Yeah, because operations are important, right? Because companies these days, especially with all the layoffs and companies tamping down on their costs, operational efficiencies and doing more with less and scaling becomes to maximize your value becomes extremely important. And the way to do it is you have to have that mindset from day one, right? When you're building, even if you're building your CS practice or partner success practice from scratch, if you put in certain foundational stones that will enable you to scale later. I mean, automations is one example, right? Like which areas could you automate? What are some of the best practices for engagement that will allow you to scale in terms of resourcing your practice later? So all these activities, if you lay the foundation stones properly from day one, it will make it easier to scale your practice later.
Chitra, I mean, I'd be curious to ask you, where do you feel that most companies start to go wrong with managing customer success?
I think it's about from an operational perspective, like I said, a few different things, right? One is most companies do get it right in the first phase where they pick their top customers to focus on and so on. But then when they see the value of CS, but when they want to scale it, that's where the hurdles come in terms of how to go about it. Because scaling a customer or partner success practice requires a certain different set of skills and competencies as compared to building the initial high value, high touch customer success practice. Because now you're looking at providing same or similar experience across a larger swath of customers. But with less number of resources, right? By leaning more heavily on self-serve or automations. And that requires people of a certain skill set to come in and to build these practices and to expand them. So you need personnel to come in and configure and build what these scalable processes look like, but you also need personnel to service them. So a high-touch customer success manager has a certain skill set, but that is slightly different from a low-touch customer success manager. They have to focus on different things. Their success metrics are different. Their engagement patterns are different. And so, that has to be figured out correctly. So if you apply a similar model as, for example, a high-touch customer success and say that, oh, you know what, I'm going to scale this practice to hundreds of customers now, that is not a winning model. So you have to recognize that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I always seem to find that we spend more time on our kind of problem customers sometimes and less time on sometimes the larger engagements or the more valuable customers. I see that pattern in a lot of companies, because you panic, you want to like solve a problem, and it's always an interesting phenomena, right? Like how do you manage these different types of customers? Nobody wants to lose a customer, right? But at the
Exactly.
same, right? But sometimes maybe you should. I don't know. I'm just curious what your thoughts are on some of those things.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be realistic about your customers' lifetime value, right? I mean, many customers, and especially in the current land and expand model, right? Customer success and partner success plays on the expand side primarily.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes when you land certain customers, they could offer a very small value, but the
Mm-hmm.
opportunity could be immense. So to be able to identify that in realistic terms and to be able to capitalize on that by building a rock solid strategy is extremely important. So by not tiering your partners or customers just based on current revenue, but based on potential revenue,
Mm-hmm.
I think becomes extremely important. And also to your point about not just worrying about the stakeholders who demand attention, but who are the stakeholders who are currently not demanding attention, but you should be looking at them for more strategic reasons. It's funny actually because a lot of time I get asked this question that, oh my God, this customer is, they need attention. They are on our backs every single day. And my perspective is that that's a good thing. One way or the other, that means that they're engaging with you. You know what's
Mm-hmm.
going on with them. The customers you really need to be worried about are the ones who have gone silent.
Mm.
Because you don't know what they're up to, so you want to make sure, and especially if they are customers that you are concerned about and they have a lot of potential to grow, you want to make sure that you know what's going on their side of the world, and you're helping them as a partner to make sure that they're successful.
Yeah, I mean that's a great point. If they're engaging, you can change the conversation and shift it. If they're not engaging, that's a big challenge. Chitra, I
Exactly.
mean, when you look out today in the marketplace, who are there examples out there that really are beacons of light for us to look at and say these folks are doing it right?
I think there are, many companies, especially in the high tech space, like Salesforce has a very good name for doing customer success well, and they acquired Slack, and I've seen some good feedback about Slack from different customers.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the high tech companies that are migrating their products, actually, many of them from the on-prem model to the cloud model, are investing heavily to make sure that the customer engagement does not suffer and in fact gets enhanced. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and they're doing a pretty good job as well. I think as a community, we all understand the importance of customer retention and expansion, and what the customer success and partner success and consulting fields have to offer in
Mm-hmm.
that regard. And like I said, I mean, I think most of the companies have invested in these practices, but I think some of the challenges come with, like I mentioned, but like, how do you scale them? How do you expand them? And so on, and how do you automate them with all this buzz around Gen AI, and even before that with AI in the mix? How to expand them is something that I think they're grappling with. I do want to make one point though, that whenever we talk about all these practices and workflows and high touch model, a lot of people assume that if you're talking high touch, that should not involve automations, and
Mm.
that's a wrong way to look at it. Because if you do automations well, again, if you set the foundational pieces in properly, automations can greatly enhance your customer experience, irrespective of the customer tier,
Yeah.
irrespective of the engagement model. So to just assume that, oh, you know what, automations and self-serve is only for the lower tier customers and partners is not the right way to think about it.
Are you excited by the things that you see coming down the pike with artificial intelligence to help that?
Absolutely. I mean, Gen I is all about conversational AI, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the bread and butter of CS, customer success and partner success functions is, consulting, is engagement, is
Mm-hmm.
conversations. And if we plug in these AI capabilities the right way, I think they can be a game changer in terms
Yeah.
of how we engage with our customers. And I see this. I see this interest on a day-to-day basis. I advise multiple early stage startups, and the reach outs that I've been getting have significantly increased since Gen AI came into the picture for the products that actually focus on customer and partner engagement.
Yeah, I know that there's a lot of excitement on, customer management, customer relationship management,
Mhm.
and I know that there have been a ton of actions made to improve things like call centers and
Oh, yeah.
BPOs in general. But I mean, when you're looking at some of the technology in the space that is really, really helpful, what is part of that kind of core stack that you say, these are the critical things that someone needs to be thinking about when they're automating this area?
Absolutely. So it starts with onboarding, right?
Hmm.
So when you're onboarding a customer, there are various ways to do it. I mean, we have our standard decks and we have meetings that we schedule and so on. But is there a way to do it better? And is there a way to do it on an ongoing basis?
Hmm.
So how do we automate that onboarding conversation, make sure that the customers are engaged and they don't fall off in the middle, right? Uh,
Hmm.
so you can definitely build some interesting models using AI for that.
Hmm.
And also, and I've used this in different companies, like ongoing engagement, things like uh, building customized status reports for them and sending it to them on a regular basis. Or when you are tracking their success metrics, if you see an issue, how do you bubble that up to the customer in the appropriate way, right? Uh,
Hmm.
build together the kind of messaging that will make them sit up and take notice. All of
Hmm.
these activities can be enriched by the artificial intelligence technology that we have in the market today. And last but certainly not the least, and you touched on it a little bit, like call centers is obviously one piece of it, but how do you automate some of these customer engagement practices at scale from a
Hmm.
customer success perspective? Customer success is focused more on enablement, right? It's focused more on providing a consultative, trusted advisor type of relationship,
Hmm.
which it is very hard to do it at scale because it's not very cost effective.
Yeah.
But by leveraging the conversational and generative AI, if we are able to create models that will really give the customers a very personal approach to engagement without necessarily investing in too many manual resources, then I think that could be a huge game changer.
I agree. I just feel like it's not an area that companies want to invest in for some reason. And I'm confused by it because I see it as being kind of like an obvious differentiator for companies and for brands. Like when when a customer has a superior solution with
Mhm.
that contact, right? That can win over a relation. That can build lifetime value, expand lifetime value and loyalty for sure. I mean, I was mentioning this on another show the other day, but same thing applies here. I was calling one of these kind of connected TV providers to cancel my subscription, and the cancellation process was so good that at the end of it, I was like, scratch it. I'm gonna stay with you guys. This has been amazing. So, so I feel like, I mean, obviously, you don't want a relationship to get to that crisis moment where a customer is trying to cancel, but I'm struggling to understand why companies that know, like we all know the metrics, right? If you expand the lifetime value of a customer, that's good. That will be more profitable, more value creation. If you expand that, it generally will grow the relationship. That's a clear metric. But I do feel like if you were to sit down in a C-suite and they think about where they're going to budget, they don't want to spend a lot there, you know?
Yeah. And I've been on, boards of companies, speaking to my direct experience, yeah, it's always a challenge. But the way I've addressed that, you have to address it with essentially what resonates, right? What resonates with the board. And obviously, one of the things that resonates and sets sales apart from CS in some capacity is the numbers game, right? So you're talking about like what's the bottom line that your function is contributing to. So tying these metrics like loyalty and engagement and first time to value to direct revenue metrics, I think is extremely important because that definitely tells the right story. What is also incredibly impactful is telling customer stories. So in my experience, talking about customer feedback. So NPS and CSAT surveys, I mean, you can definitely do that, but really picking up some core customers and talking about how they value this engagement that we are providing them and what a difference it has made in moving the needle with that customer plays a very significant role. I think storytelling is often extremely important, but underestimated part of being a leader and a board member. And
Well,
yeah.
I think all board members need to get your book for sure. And certainly, Chitra, it's been amazing talking with you today about the customer success space, about how companies need to be thinking differently when they scale it and make sure that it gets integrated, but also gets structured in an efficient and effective way. We've been speaking with Chitra Madhwacharyula. She is a guru on the Customer Success Center of Excellence space. We've been talking to her about her latest book, Scaling Customer Success, which is all about building the Customer Success Center of Excellence. And we've been talking about some really, really interesting points. There are challenges up and down the food chain here in terms of how you scale this, but really making sure you get those foundational principles right, making sure that you use technology in the right way, to not just think that this means more people hours to manage these relationships, but how can you do this also in a way that's consistent across the board. Chitra, thank you so much for being on the Uncaged show today. Really, really interesting conversation. If someone wanted to learn more about what you are working on, where's the best place to reach you?
They can reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I would be happy to have a conversation.
Excellent. Well, thank you again for being on the show today, and we look forward to having you back.
Thank you. It's been wonderful.